I grew up being taught that two wrongs do not make a right. It's not like math and multiplication where you multiply a negative times a negative and get a positive. It's straightforward addition. In fact, it's worse than that. It's more apt to be the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Evil plus evil, wrong plus wrong equals a whole lot more evil and a whole lot more wrong. And I am sickened. I'm sickened that a fellow American, George Floyd, age 46 with 2 daughters, wasn't granted due process and was needlessly killed in the process of arrest by Minnesota police officers who have been fired and whose actions will be investigated. I am sickened that some of my fellow Americans have decided to loot and burn and bring untold damage and violence to a great and decent city, Minneapolis, home to some of my own family members. I am sickened that in a country which celebrates only one American with a federal holiday, only one, Dr. Martin Luther King, he who taught and modeled righteous preaching and condemnation against racism, discrimination, and evil, along with non-violent protests and uncompromising rhetoric, to see on the news fellow Americans justify the looting and violence done against the property of innocent Americans while claiming somehow to follow the teachings of Martin Luther King. I'm sickened when words and rhetoric from all sides seem designed to incite more anger and violence and cursing, more hate, more destruction, more division. It's sickening. It's sickening. Two wrongs do not make a right. It's my conviction, not as a pastor, not as a politician, but as a Christian, a human being, as an American, to say this is not the way. We need to stop it. Now, maybe you don't take Jesus as seriously as I do. I'm fine with that. I do take him seriously, as did Martin Luther King, and so do other leaders who bring great change like Mahatma Gandhi. And I want to say this, if you're not a Jesus follower, you have a right to expect more from those of us that say that we are. And both Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi, they read the same words that I'm going to read today. I'm hoping that you'll listen, take it in, and whether you are a Christian or not, I'm hoping that you will decide to walk in light and not in darkness. There's plenty of darkness right now. We need people who are willing to have the courage and grace and conviction to walk in light. And by the way, these are words that transcend Minneapolis and transcend the stresses and conflict that this pandemic is fostering. These are words that will have lasted for 2,000 years, and they will still be just as valid and just as helpful to our children and our grandchildren's generation. Again, our verse that we've been looking at, Matthew 5:14, you are the light of the world. Jesus is telling us in all generations that the world needs light. There are some that would rather blaze a path of darkness and hate, but I choose to walk in the light, and as 1 John 1:7 says, to walk in the light as he himself is in the light. Also, I like to read some other verses that I think are applicable today and now. Romans 12:17 says this. It goes back to the first thing I said. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Some of the Old Testament language, an eye for an eye. It just makes everybody very, very blind. And I think this is true in the micro and the macro, returning evil for evil. If somebody slights us in a small way, we want to get back to them we want to say a small way, but it's usually a small way and a little bit extra. Somebody hurts us in a big way, we want them hurt in a big way. The Bible says, do not repay evil for evil. You'll just get more evil and you will become just like your enemy. He goes on, this is Paul in Romans 12, be careful to do what is right, and if it is possible, as far as it depends upon you, live at peace with all. And do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, as it is written. It is mine to revenge. It is mine to avenge, and I will repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. And in doing this, you are heaping burning coals on his head. It's the best way to get even, is to not be like your enemies and bless them with goodness. And the final verse in verse 21, do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. The Apostle Peter says this in 1 Peter 3:9, do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. We like to insult when people insult us, don't we? On the contrary, he says, repay evil with a blessing. Because of this, you were called so that you may inherit a blessing. I want everybody to check your Twitter feed, check your Instagram, check your Facebook. Check the language that you are using. And it's hard to see when we insult others. We are quick to notice when people insult us. We've got great radar for that. And sometimes we are quick to notice when people insult others. But we find it difficult to recognize when our caustic, toxic, hateful language is insulting to others. Do this. Read your recent political posts or philosophical posts or critical posts and read it back to yourself in a really snarky tone and see what it sounds like, because that's probably how people are taking it. In the Gospel of Luke, beautiful, one of my favorite life verses, Luke chapter 6, verse 27. You're going to notice 4 groups of hostile people, hostile towards us, and then 4 actions that we're supposed to take when we find ourselves in conflict with these groups. Let me tell you the 4 groups are. They are your enemies, those that hate you, those that curse you, and those that mistreat you. Do you got any of those in your life? Enemies, those who hate you, those that curse you, and those that mistreat you. If you don't have any of those people, you are a saint and you are really blessed, or you don't go out very much. But here's what we're supposed to do when we find ourselves facing these people. Jesus says, but to you who are listening, I like that beginning, by the way. If you're a person that really is concerned about what Jesus is saying, but to those of you that are listening, I might come back to that in a moment. I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those that mistreat you. 4 words: love, do good, bless, and pray. I'm going to say it again. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those that curse you, and pray for those that mistreat you. So are you listening? Now, maybe Christian faith is important to you. These words are really especially for you. These are not words for people outside the faith. I think it's too hard for people outside the faith. I think it's too much to put on them. But those of us are of the faith, we are to listen to these words. And by the way, maybe you're not a believer. Maybe, but you like Jesus. Maybe you're a doobie brother Christian. Jesus is just all right with me. Jesus is just all right. You're not a big fan of Christians, but you like Christ. I get that. I fully understand that completely. A lot of people love Jesus, read the stories, read the gospel, and go, this is a pretty cool guy. I like how he lived his life, and I like what he taught. Well, I'm speaking to you too. Try him on. If you like him, if you respect him, try to live out what he's teaching here. Again, love, bless, do good, and pray. Now, people ask me, well, where do you stand in all this? All this stuff, Minnesota, the cops. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to stand with the cops. And yeah, there are some bad ones. Just as there are bad pastors and bad preachers, that doesn't mean I'm going to stop being a minister. There are bad teachers. It doesn't mean you should stop being a teacher. There's bad in every field, in every occupation. But I work closely with cops. fairly closely for 10 years, and for 4 years very closely with two fabulous chiefs of police. And I want to assure you that cops are good as a rule, and that across the nation right now, every police department is reviewing their arrest procedures and protocols. I'm standing with cops. I am also standing with victims, those who are or have been oppressed, disenfranchised, and hurt by both historic and current racism and sexism and discrimination. Now, folks, come on, we got to all admit we have come an amazingly long way, but we've not crossed the finish line yet. It's a marathon, and we've come a long way, and we're not done yet. There's still work to be done, clearly. And I would like to remind those of us who have been part of, I hate this language, I really do, a privileged class who have not historically been discriminated against. It is harder for us to see it and detect it. And those that are part of groups that have been discriminated against, I would like to make a suggestion. We will make greater progress when we acknowledge the victories and progress that we've already achieved. We would like to have an equitable society. We would like to have a just society. We would like to root out all sexism and all discrimination. But we need to celebrate our successes. And we have come an amazingly long ways since the Jim Crow laws. We really have. And I want to suggest this to my brothers, to my friends who are part of a class of people who have been wronged and damaged in the past and still today. To be cautious, to not see sexism, to not see racism in every careless and thoughtless word that somebody puts forth. And also to help us to acknowledge our successes and our victories. I really think this is important, and I hope all will hear this. We need to appreciate where we've come so we can keep moving forward. Otherwise, we're pessimistic. Otherwise, if we're told we haven't made any improvement, this is simple psychology. If we're told we've not made any improvement and we've worked this hard at it for so long, we're going to give up. And I don't want us to give up. Finally, a couple more verses. And by the way, I want it to be clear. I stand against unlawful violence and hate of any kind. It's just not the Jesus way, and that is the way that I've chosen, the Jesus way. I hope that you'll join me as well. So a final verse as a challenge. This comes from 1 John chapter 2, verse 9. It says, if anyone claims to be in the light, but he hates his brother or his sister, he's still in the darkness. He's got a dark heart. He's in a dark place. And anyone who loves the brother and sister, he lives in the light, and there is nothing in them to make them stumble. They're going to do well. But anyone who hates a brother or sister is in the darkness and walks around in the darkness. They do not know where they're going. They shouldn't be followed, by the way, because the darkness has blinded them. So if you have hate in your heart, and you know if you do or you don't, you're in a dark place. Head back to the light. And in my religion, this is just my faith system, it means walking with Christ. I'm siding against the haters and those that want to forgive and love and bring about positive change. So finally, again, Matthew 5:14, you are the light of the world. So be that today in speech, attitude, and actions. Be the light of the world in speech, attitude, and actions. God bless the United States. God bless the great city of Minneapolis, and God bless you today.